Welcome back, people. I hope you had a filling lunch. So now we'll be having a panel discussion on zero to world journey of organization security. So let's welcome our esteemed panelists. So first we have Anjana Sathyan, who is Director of Customer Experience at Cloudsec, and she will be moderating this panel. Please welcome her with a huge round of applause. Next, we have Amol Naik, who is Chief Information Security Officer. And then we have Jayesh Chauhan, who is CISO at CoinSwitch. And then we have Nikhil P Kulkarni, Head of Security at Deserve. And then we have VeeraBabu, who is founder of IoT Security. Please welcome them all with a huge round of applause.
A very good afternoon, everybody. Today we have the panel discussion on 0 to 1 journey of a cybersecurity company. So I think all of you are like starting into your career or maybe in the mid journey. So we have an esteemed panel here who will run us through, based on their experience, how the journey has been, and we hope to get a lot of learnings about what to do, what not to do, and how do you scale, how do you keep it relevant in the current scenario. I think we'll have a quick round of introduction. I'll introduce myself first. I'm Anjana. I started my career in Synopsys as a pen tester, then moved to CloudSec. Now, currently, I'm running delivery there. I'll just pass.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Jayesh Chauhan. I work as a CISO for a company called CoinSwitch. We are PeopleCo now. Rebranding is happening. But I've been in security for the last 13 years. Got the fortune of talking into presenting my I've built 4 open source tools. I've got the fortune of presenting it in multiple conferences like Black Hat, DEF CON, NullCon, etc. I've trained also in similar conferences. I've trained also in Indian Navy a while back. But yeah, I also run a community called Cloud Village out of DEF CON and RSA now. It's been 6 years. We've been doing it. I work as a trainer as well. And after 13 years of telling my mom that I've been presenting in different areas, this is the first time she's actually here. So you finally made it.
Okay. Hi, everyone. This is Nikhil Prabhakar. I currently work as the head of security for a wealth management company called Deserve. And I've been in the industry for almost 9 years now. And I started off my career with Microsoft, eventually moved as an analyst, and eventually moved my way up into looking at different areas of security. So yeah, I think that's about me. I'll pass it on to Veera.
Hi, everybody. My name is Veera, and known as Mr. IoT. I run the community called as IoT Security 101. And that's all about me, nothing more than that.
Hello, everyone. I'm Amol Naik. Been in the industry for around 20 years now. Half of my experience was more majorly on the offensive side, what we call as pen testers and hackers. Last 7-8 years, I'm doing a defensive work. Started with Flipkart, Gojek, and Unacademy. So I've been working as CISO at Unacademy for the last 3 years. So I think that's pretty much about it. And thanks, Anjana, for putting us here in this panel.
All right, I think we'll quickly start off. So we'll start with Jayesh. So Jayesh, if you could quickly run us through how your journey has been setting up things from the scratch, be it Sprinkler or now with CoinSwitch. What are your key takeaways? Like, how would one start up with a framework? What should they pick up first? And how do they set things up? So if you could just take us through the journey, that would be...
Yes. So my past experience, as you said, has been around Sprinkler and PayPal. And 10 years back when I was with PayPal, there was a very different structure. The teams were not very agile. But as I did the transition towards Sprinkler in 2016, I saw the teams were more agile. What I would say, if you're starting off, first understand your business. Are you a B2B firm? Are you a B2C firm? What kind of clients you're catering to, right? That kind of helps you. The security team, knowing that is very important for security team. Once you have that in place, you need to understand the product, and you have to have good engineers in place so that... So here's the thing about product security. A lot of us who do security testing or pen testing, we think that, okay, we find the issue, our journey stops there, and then go and fix it up. For product security, the journey actually starts there. then your business would come out and say, we can't fix this because because this will kill business. If there is no business, then what's the point of having a security team? So as security team, you have to train your folks and hire in a manner that they think they're problem solvers. They're acting more as an enabler, because security by design itself is a blocker. So you have to find that way. From another thing from scratch part is one person can't do everything. Like you can okay, so for me, it's security, no security, illusion of security. You don't want to be here, right? So you want to structurize your human resources well, hire good talent. You need to have, majorly from a tech standpoint, you need to have 3 pillars, which is your application security. If you're cloud, infrastructure security, nowadays every company is born in cloud, so you need to have cloud folks there. Enterprise security also, which works in tandem with IT team. I would say at least have one person in each team. Have application security would be a little heavy, so you have to have a plan to grow through it. And depending on which business you are in, always your compliance certification will also come into picture. I would say even in any space you are in, a SOC 2 really helps. It builds credibility in front of your clients, whether be it customer, be it business, and slowly you can well up to different kind of certification. It's always going to be a journey. Perfectionism also is a journey, and you would never achieve it. It's just an uphill battle. But you have to understand where you start the journey from. The better you make the foundation, the farther you can go for. It is not a sprint. It's always a marathon.
All right. I think a lot of useful insight. Jayesh has helped us know it's very important to know your business to start with. And then you need to start with testing to know where you stand. And then identify the gaps, slowly build the team, enable them, train them, right? So that they're building products that are secure by nature, and eventually move to compliance, right? I think I'll move on to Nikhil now. So Nikhil, based on your experience in VA security testing, what are the starting things that you think one should start off, right? Okay, where do I start with security testing? We are assuming that a company is just setting up things from the scratch. That's the kind of experience that we want the audience to have. So where does one start, right? In terms of VA security testing, pen testing, from that aspect, if you could share.
Sure. So just to add to what Jayesh also mentioned, right? So the first and foremost thing an individual who is getting into security needs to really understand is the business. What are we exactly into? What are the crown jewels of our company, right? What are the set of parameters or data, or what kind of resources if the company goes through a breach, or if those things are exposed, it's a big deal for us. The company's reputation goes down. Everything is out, completely done and dusted, right? So we need to look at it from that perspective, trying to understand what are the resources that we really want to protect in the first place, right? And then we can start working backwards, trying to understand how do we really want to implement processes and technology in place, and eventually build culture on top of it to ensure that all these things work together. And only then we'll be able to ensure that security is added accordingly, right? To begin with, I think when I got into Deserve, I think the first task that I had in hand was to build the entire security right from scratch, 0 to 1. And fortunately, the management was on the side that, hey, Nikhil, we want to get a certification done, which was an ISO 27001 back then. What I realized is, when you go to different teams, tell them that, hey, I want to implement such and such things in security, trying to understand how they work and all of that, it becomes very difficult for you to convince them when you're completely new into the organization, telling them that, hey, there's this some guy who's coming in and dictating all these things onto us, right? There will certainly be a lot of pushback that you will get to see there, right? You will then have to be at loggerheads with different set of teams. Like, the sales team will not even care about you, that you even exist, right? So in such scenarios, the only thing that really comes in handy or really helps would be something like a certification or something like an audit, right? Because everyone goes down to audit. And in the industry that we are in, wealth management, where risk, people really understand what exactly is a risk, right? And they know, if we do not comply, then how it will impact our sales and how it will impact our reputation and all of that. So that certainly came in as a blessing in disguise for me, wherein the first thing I wanted to ensure that was to implement, was to get ourselves certified, right? So what happened, because of the certification was the end goal, let's say, because of which we had to work backwards, implement quite a lot of the things, the security controls into the place across all the different set of teams. So that really helped. Yeah, I think that's the first way how I would look at it, how things work for me.
All right. Thanks, Nikhil. I think couple of very interesting insights, especially on setting the house in order. I think it's a challenge that a lot of people face. Initially, when you start out, people will not be aligned, and then you'll have to put in a lot of efforts to get everybody onto the same page, making sure they understand the importance and the criticality. And also about working backward, right? Usually people start with a there should be some certificate that they're trying to get, and they're like, oh, now we need this, what more can we do? And then there it starts. All right, I think we'll go on to Veera now. So because you're an expert in the IoT space, if you could share insights, especially from the hardware standpoint, let's say, now we spoke about how important it's knowing one's business. Let's say if a company is primarily hardware based, what would you recommend, right? Where do they start, and what are the best practices, and how do they set up the entire framework?
Yes, I want to give some suggestion, but as I'm a tester, like a security guy, and I never believe like every device is secure first. There is a loophole in everything. But I can give some suggestion that give us some time for the hackers to get into it. Like there is some standards which is widely known as like a NIST and some of the other things. And those just can give some time to hackers to breach into the devices. It does not mean it is completely secure. So let's take it comes under the hardening part. So there are some certain rules you can implement even in device side and IoT devices side. And this mostly like a secure development lifecycle program, it will come. But problem is here to finding the person who can understand the implementation and breaking into it. Let's take it as this comes under the product security again. I need to know how to implement the hardening and everything, and I need to know about how to break into it. So to find this kind of people is another challenge in the organization of which is running an IoT device or any product security, product manufacturing. And based on now my experience, what I can suggest to latest chips like which is coming under everything, they are all by default coming with a lot of security implementation like secure boot and other things. So moving towards to the advanced technologies always helps a lot. But because I can still see the product which is launched 10 years back still running in the market, so which doesn't support the much technology, but still it is in the network. So of course, it can be hackable. So that's why everyone telling like IoT devices carry hacking and all. But in reality, latest chips is not that much easy to hack. And most probably to get survival of IoT, any device security companies, first they have to fix on the supply chain issue also. Because that is what make end of the day money to the every rotation where survival of all the things. That's all of my points, nothing more.
Thanks, Veera. I think from IoT standpoint also, we got a lot of insights. So one key takeaway that I can make an order is making sure that you're picking up the right devices which are secure by nature, and then ensuring that you keep it up to date, and also the supply chain aspect, right? Now we go to Amol. Sir, so I think you have a lot of experience right now. When I look at you, you've started in setting things up in Gojek from the scratch. I know my brother worked in the company, so it's like, now this is a big organization, right? They have teams spread across various countries. Could share insights on how does one implement security at that scale, and making sure that you also pass on the right standards to the people who works out of a different country, who works out of a different culture, from that side, if you could, apart from whatever the team has shared, if there are more points to add.
I think Jayesh and Nikhil already covered a lot of things. So when I started in Gojek, the mandate was to start the product security. It took around 2 years to mature the entire secure SDLC process, where we started from testing products in production to where we were basically controlling the release of applications, which basically making sure that all the secure SDLC phases are audited and approved. At an academy, there was a different experience. So I normally at any company, I basically look at what are the mandates and what are the top, let's say, 3 or 5 risks which we need to basically work on. And that comes from, either it's a regulatory industry, or is it there is any incidents happen. So that gives in a list of, priorities which we need to basically pick up and then build a roadmap on top of that. Once you have a roadmap in place, then you basically buy products, build teams and stuff like this. So I think more details are already been covered. So that would be, that is what my approach was mainly.
How to work with different geographically.
So I think different geography is always a challenge. What I believe is it's always good to have your presentation over there, right? Representation. So it's better to hire,
Locally.
security people, local people closer to the engineering teams, so that they can basically work them very closely, and they also shares their insights to the other team. So that's how.
Thank you so much, Amol. I think one takeaway that I have is being the bad cop is important. He spoke about holding of releases when security testing is not done properly. All right, I think we covered a lot of segments on how to start and what are the important things to note while you're setting things from the scratch. Now, all of us agree that we need various tools and vendors in place while we progress in our journey towards maturing the security of an organization. So, and currently we are in a place where there are too many vendors, irrespective of whichever space that you take in. So, if the panel could share insights on how do you find the best vendor or how do you find the best tool? What are the parameters that you take for evaluating, and how do you measure the quality and also make sure that they're constantly providing value, right? So, if you could.
10 years back, it was a different story. Today, the open source space is so crazy that you don't need a lot of budget. As I said, you need to have at least have one person who knows the tech of application, cloud, or wherever you are, right? Push the person towards, and I think in general, if you hire well, they themselves are geared towards it. Let's tinker with open source tools. There is a plethora of open source tools out there. Yes, obviously, as I said earlier, you have to understand the business, the scope of it. And then you go towards the open source route. You look at things, so basically open source are, if you have not used them much, there are challenges around it handled by people who are doing it as their side thing because they want to help out the community. There are challenges towards setting it up. And if you have a decently tech savvy person, they can set it up. Sometimes you end up contributing to that open source also because you find some gaps and your team contributes back. That actually works well for the org and for the individual as well. But essentially, when you're doing open source, you are actually setting up a baseline of what's plausible for free. When that happens, your communication with vendor is on a very different league altogether, right? After that, never have one vendor to believe that, okay, this vendor will solve my thing. At least have to get into the vendor space, look for, if you're a small organization, don't start with industry leader because you as an organization are also growing. But start somewhere. If you're a smaller organization, look at the new companies which are coming in. Now with the open source work, you already have a baseline which you have set up. What's the expectation? Then you go with a vendor POC. I would not name a company, but someone actually told me that we don't do POCs. And I'm like, I can tell you any crap and would you believe and buy that? So that is when our conversation stopped. But there are vendors where you actually find friction on not doing POC, put your foot down. Because you already done, open source kind of makes your backbone very strong that, hey, I know this can be done. What else you have to offer? Start the conversation. One thing which a lot of company miss and leads or engineers specifically misses, have an NDA in place. Please have a non-disclosure agreement in place before you start a POC. Right? Once that is done, go through the POC, set the expectation well with the vendor that this is a baseline we are coming from. We want to see what you have what you have to offer, and then we will start the journey. Sometimes that expectation is not set, and you have to look at from the vendor perspective. Also, they are putting in resources towards you. You can't have sandcastles or like fake promises, and then go the other way. Once the POC is done, and I think I'll always say talk about numbers once your POC is done. I see a lot of practices where people are already haggling about the prices and everything. You don't even know what the product does, right? Go through that journey, then gauge it well. And then also one important pillar to note is see what kind of support you're getting from the vendor. a lot of times the bucks stop as soon as the agreement is done, and then they are gone for something else altogether. So see what kind of support is coming in, right? And if you are into regulated space, if you are into a business which is more unique, make sure your vendor has the right compliance certificate, right? I've done a lot of product security in my previous companies, and I've done it globally, but I'm realizing that sometimes a vendor is good, everything is good, but then they are not compliant to a certain level, and that's why we can't onboard it, because we have regulations, right? So sorry for the scenic route for this whole thing, but I wanted to make sure I cover everything, and then I'm sure you'll end up with a good vendor, which actually solves the problem, right? I've even, just to add, you once used an argument that I know you're a good vendor, but I can solve this with just hiring an engineer who can code. So have that hard conversations, right? Thank you.
Just to add to Jayesh, I think it's very important to have a very detailed evaluation criteria. I mean, what you need, because probably, being a startup, low on budget, you probably might want to look at a product which can do multiple things to begin with, right? So you have to look at what technologies you already currently using, and then are there any other tools which basically support those? Can the tool do, 4 things, right? So having detailed evaluation checklist and your side, it's very helpful to evaluate the multiple vendors. That I think rest already covered by Jayesh.
Yeah, just to also add to that is, what is the learning curve with procuring that tool or the vendor, right? So if there's going to be a lot of things that the teams need to really work on or learn after we procure it, then it's not the right way to look at it, right? And also at times it so happens that, okay, the tool is great, but is that something that would be required for your setup? Let's say your cloud spend itself is like, say, 100,000 USD, and then you're procuring a WAF tool which is a half of cost of that, right? So that certainly doesn't really work out in the long run, if you see, right? So of course, security implementations are important, but we also need to see not just from a security perspective alone, but also from the other areas, like what is the cost, and if it's something that will suit your team well, or what is the learning curve that is needed for it. So all these areas will also be helpful.
Veera, anything to be added from your end?
There's small incidents which happened to me that I will share. So as a part of my work, is a firmware analysis is one of the part. So static analysis tools, so there is a lot of vendors outside there. And I have tweeted one thing, like I just want looking at some tools, and some people came to me, DM me, you can try it out, our trial versions. I checked it out. When I see the report, I know this report is generated by some open source tool, because which I'm familiar with all the time. And I directly asked them, are you using particular tool? Then they said, instead of agreeing that part, we are cybersecurity people, we have 10 years experience and all. Bro, thank you. That's all. So this always happens in everywhere. So as per the add-on this experience, yeah, of course, it always depends on an engineer also look into it, like just telling into the tool, just buy it out. First, ask for the trial version, check it out, what kind of features they have and all. And experiment, if really adding a value to it, just go for it. Otherwise, say no it.
One thing to add is, when you're going with open source route, please look for if there are any CVs around those open sources, right? The last thing you want is a security product having a vulnerability.
That's right. All right. I think I'll just summarize what the panel has shared with us so far. So Jayesh started off stating that evaluating open source is super important, and especially making sure that they're not vulnerable. And another is doing a very detailed POC, making sure that you understand the value the vendor is providing, and then pick the right one. Also, from a service standpoint, support is very important. Vendors should be there with you whenever you need them. And also making sure that they comply to the right compliance requirement and all the certificates in place. Another that Nikhil has highlighted was about the learning, making sure that you are also learning with the vendor. They are also teaching you new things, right? So not just that the vendor is not evaluating innovative enough and there are no new things coming up. I think we'll move on to the next question. So now that we have spoken about what tools to bring in, we'll look at how do we make sure that the system that we have in place, especially the security system or the structure or the procedures and standard SOPs that you have put in terms of cybersecurity in an organization, stays resilient. Because we are in an area where everything is changing, right? Very rapidly. There are new technologies coming in. There are new threat vectors that nobody has heard about. Every other day there are CVs and zero days coming in. So how do you ensure that your organization is adapted and also on top of the curve when it comes to being highly secure and up to the mark in terms of the emerging threats?
Take that up. Want to start from there or should I start?
See, I think when you have a security program, obviously having a resiliency is very important.
Right.
That's where I think most of the vendors help us to, get that seed, to know what is going on around the world, what are the new vulnerabilities, are there solutions. See, I think being in security industry, we know that if somebody actually wants to attack you, nobody can defend, right? So what we need to do is we need to make them more difficult to, right? So layered security is another object, and having a, though it is very difficult, having a proper patching is probably, help secure more, but in reality it's very difficult. Roll out the patching policy.
Context. So the individual who's the security champion will have complete context at both the ends. So it becomes a lot more easier for the security team to implement any new thing that comes in. Let's say if tomorrow there's a Log4j kind of a vulnerability, right? Something similar, not something that could be handled via your supply chain or your DevSecOps CI/CD pipelines, right? So let's say if a situation like that arises, then you can have those conversations with these security champions that, hey, we have something like this that has come up now, and can you please tell me which are all the systems where it will be impacting, right? So they will be in a better position to go but dig deeper into their systems and tell us, hey, these are all the places where things are going wrong, and then this is how we can look at it. So that is certainly one aspect. And of course, if you, I think at a very core level, engineering, let's say if you're talking specifically on product security, the engineering of the product has to be done right. I know it's a very vague statement to make, but what do you call a good engineered product? Something that is scalable, which is performant, highly available, and reliable, right? So SPAR. So these are the four aspects, and security is something that cuts across all of this, and then it becomes something that is very common there. So I think if these things are fundamentally looked at, I think it becomes something where you can build on top of it. Yeah.
I have two answers to this. One is a cooler one, another is a not so cooler one. So I'll start with the latter one. Having documentation. One of the auditors taught me this. They are very heavy on something called as PDCA, plan, do, check, and act. Planning is something, if you are doing that well by keeping the function, what kind of services you have, and if you plan it well, you document it, and you store it in something like Confluence, because there is versioning in place. No one can go and change it. Please make sure that no one can delete the older version. I've seen that weird thing as well. But if you plan things well, and then you do check and act around it, that really works. But it gets boring, to be honest. When you start doing that, you do. Yes, there are different types of talent. Some folks are good with doing that 9 to 6. Some security folks are they want to tinker more. The cooler answer is make them go to community events, get them to participate. Sometimes this is, I think, while the profession involves regular hacking or into it, sometimes we forget, we localize it only to our work. We don't put it up in our general way of being. This for me is a very quick learning hack. Go to community events, speak there, get yourself to be known, and just ask questions. I think no one was born with all the answers, and it's always nice to keep that intact. Ask stupid questions and you'll get answers.
Right? Slightly of time.
It's very quiet.
Audience is fairly quiet. So we spoke about how can one stay up to date on emerging threats, and panel has passed on importance of patching things right, making sure that you're also looking at everything that's newly coming in. And we also heard about how important it's to plan way ahead so that you're on top of everything, and most importantly, ask questions. There are no stupid questions. You should just take help whenever you are in need. And another was around making sure there are champions internally who are expert in their own areas, and they're contributing back to your security culture, and all of you grow together. I think we are at the last part of the question, wherein we would want to look at the bad and the ugly. What are the mistakes that one should avoid? If you could also share about failures from your experience, what went wrong, what should one not do when they are setting up things from scratch, and what are the common pitfalls to avoid?
Okay, I'll take that up. We'll not get into how bad things can get. Okay, let's talk about how to avoid those, right? I might use a weird language here, but this is something of a guiding principle. I've been using it with my team, and Cloud Village also operates, like the community I run operates with that shit's gonna go wrong. Don't worry about it, right? Learn from it well. And then make sure, I don't know, if it works, take it up to your ego that, hey, I'm not gonna screw up in the same way again. That way, this very fundamental, very simple concept can help you navigate through security with ease. As lead, you have to set the same expectation with folks who are above you, that the only secure system is one sitting on an island and not connected to internet. So we are regularly fighting the fight on finding and fixing known vulnerabilities. No one even talks about 0 days. That's a different world altogether, right? So as lead, you have to set a certain expectation. As lead, you have to set an expectation below as well, that if it goes wrong, it's all right. It should not go wrong again. And then you learn through it, because your baseline keeps improving. You have to start somewhere, but you keep improving your baseline, and that's a nice journey. And I think it keeps people happy.
I think one of the pitfall I think I would like to mention is when you're starting from scratch, majorly people, you should not basically go and buy technologies without people, because we need team to handle those issues. We really don't want to burn, people with work, right? So I think that is one of the issue I would want to highlight here. People.
Well, I think a couple of points here was one, making sure that you're the right team, and also hire right at the right time so that you can scale things up. We are more or less at the end of the session. We are running apparently 10 minutes late. So I'll open up the forum for the audience. If you have any questions for the panel, please feel free to ask.
Regarding the organization security, I met with one incident. So I'm not disclosing about it, but I would like to get a feedback on this incident. So we were developing a security strategy for an organization. So at some point of time, we got an instruction that we have to transfer the risk. Means we have to outsource some part of it to an organization. How would you consider it? What will be your stand on that?
So your question is that at some point you got a requirement that we need to offload some work towards a different entity, and
Yes.
how do we onboard them?
Basically, they said is that like we have to transfer the risk so that like our organization will not be able to take the risk fully on ourselves.
Was it like an insurance product? Because there are companies insurance companies.
It's not an insurance company.
Sorry? So if you have a requirement to solve something via an MSSP, I can answer that, but transferring blame is something I can't answer.
Okay, so like that is what I'll talk question. So
I think that is called as a risk treatment, right? You basically look at what are the risks you want to manage, how many risks you can manage, and whichever you can basically transfer. That is not like sending the
Where this is
blame. It is like, having partnership like MSSP, someone said, right? So you can basically work with them so that, those part of risk will be managed by them. So maybe that the risk.
I was just questioning the origination of the question altogether, because I think why I asked that. Sorry if I was a bit assertive on that. Sometimes security is a people problem. If the culture is like, okay, let's shift it, then the culture needs to be fixed first, right? But yeah, from a audit perspective, risk register perspective, I do understand that you can, but there is no silver bullet to do it. It's again culture, security, and if you need help, then you pass it along to other vendor to share load. But for that, you have to do a risk assessment of how good the vendor is, how well they treat their security, and sometimes that involves installing your data loss prevention agent like to their systems also, because they'll be handling your data, right? But if you see that question of how to pass risk, please ask questions again to them.
And one more thing, like recently we were planning to set up an inbuilt facility for SIEM and all the monitoring steps. So even though we have the resources, the company were asserting that we have a trusted partner. So they will be taking care of all our projects. So why is it? What is your stand on?
I'll give. Yeah, go ahead, please come.
Is in-house security outsourcing the security, which would be the better for our organization?
With managed SOC or managed SIM, it becomes sometimes it's a conscious call also, because let's say I'm leading stuff there, right? At my org, and a SIM or a managed SOC operation is 24/7, 365. I can't be up all the time, right? And managing a team also involves that at some point I'll have to stay up, right? Because it'll be 24/7. So offloading that to a managed vendor is less overhead for leadership to put effort in the right direction, right? And there are always different ways of implementing it, like L1, L2 issues. You can get some like those guys to take it, but if it's an L3 level, it comes to your point of contact, like internal point of contact. You can do threat intelligence. You can learn from it, iteratively improve it as well. But the shorter answer is that it's a lot of management overhead at times. So that's why you use the managed SOC to make it better.
One question, like in order to have a security level upgraded in the organization, do we require everything under one domain? I would say like we have threat intelligence, threat modeling, everything should be implemented on our organization or not to climb up the security ladder.
Everything should be implemented, but while it's good in theory, in practicality, you're just implementing bits and pieces. That's your holy grail you go towards. Right? But anywhere you can plug in between, if you can do threat model, if you can do code scanning, if you do pen testing, anything, you pick your battles. But that's the beautiful picture you're going towards, right? So no silver bullet, but since it's a people problem as well, you kind of look at where things are and then you move from it.
Thank you. That's all.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think since we are... Okay. One last question, because we are running out of time. You could catch up with the panel anytime outside.
Yeah.
Please go ahead, Mudin.
Jayesh mentioned in his answer that air-gapped systems are usually considered secure. But then if you look at the Stuxnet incident, it was an air-gapped system and yet everything happened. So how would you like to change your statement because of Stuxnet, or what do we think about air-gapped?
Can you repeat the air gap part? I don't
Is there so the secure system is something server on the island?
Yeah. Stuxnet was different. That malware can move through electrical signals. That was a very different thing. USBs were kept out. Someone plugged it in and in the system. And one thing what it could do was that malware could go through SCADA systems. That was one of the first ones we had seen, which would change the whole, in order to get enriched uranium, you have to have certain frequency, some 200 odd centrifuge to move in a certain frequency. It'll go and screw it up.
Sorry to cut you off, but then the whole purpose of island systems is to stay secure, disconnected from the internet. But then if the data is valuable enough, we have seen in the past as well, that attackers would actually go buy a boat or build systems or tunnel into the systems, into the facilities to plug that USB in themselves.
Yes. So you have to be, Stuxnet was, that facility was not on an island, right?
All right.
It had human, right? People problem. Security is a people problem, right? You keep gauging at it. I'm glad you're bringing this up. That was that's an old saying about the island thing. But essentially, to summarize it, you have your external vector, which is your internet, your public internet, but you have intranet as well, and people is also another vector. Does that help understand?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Thank you for asking.
All right, I think we are more or less on concluding the entire session. So through the panel, we looked at what are the various things that an organization need to take care while setting things from the scratch, and how do you scale? How do you find the right vendors in place, and how do you stay up to date and is resilient towards all the emerging threats? And that's pretty much it. I think we'll just summarize here because we're running out of time. Thank you so much, everybody, for listening to the panel.